Guys, I'm here with the one and only Matt Bell at the High Energy Tour. How you doing, Matt?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks for having us out here. It's a beautiful day, fun day for a tournament. Learned some great things. I'll just kick it off with a few putting questions because that's what we really learned earlier with you. So putting, right? It seems like a skill that is really very stressful for players in the moment to try and make a putt when they know a lot's on the line. And while there's a lot on the technical side of how to putt and how to, get the right spin, get the right motions, I don't think there's too much on the mental side that's really covered on resources such as YouTube, online, or whatever. Do you have any tips for the mental side of putting?
I do. I actually did a thing with Pulse Academy. They flew me out to the Canary Islands to do some putting out there in January. And I got into the mental side a lot of it because we didn't have a basket for the first 2 days we were on the island.
Oh, wow.
And a Frenchman ended up bringing us the basket on the third day, but first 2 days we did mental for the most part. There's that resource out there if you want some of that, but it's basically what I've been teaching today. You're a part of that was some of the mental side developing. And I've heard recently a few people talk about, like Brian Earhart and a couple others, about finding your natural putt. I know McCabe's done a video too, maybe Yuli as well, on how to find your natural putt. Scott Stokely. There's some out there. There's something about that because that's not going to break down in a pressure situation. You're talking about making a putt for money or games on the line. If you're trying to emulate somebody or something that you've done, or maybe you haven't even done it, if you haven't ever made that putt before in your life, which nobody has till you're facing that moment. So if you're trying to do something you got to think about, you're not going to be putting subconsciously without thinking about it. And if you develop a putt that's natural, you don't have to think about it. You can rely on your instincts at that moment to come up with the correct putt for that moment and give it a good chance of going in.
Awesome. So instincts is not something that is easily drawn upon, but when you really need it, it's there. I feel, for myself included, a lot of people lining up these putts, sometimes when we're standing there staring at the basket, we know you make your 30-footers all the time in your backyard, whatever, but when you're really faced with it in the moment, it seems like those invasive thoughts. How do I, you forget in the moment, how do I do this? What am I supposed to do? Is that something that just comes with more repetition and then the instinct naturally comes, or is it sometimes you have to really buckle down and settle that side of yourself down?
It's certainly something you have to develop too, is in the game of disc golf, you can go from playing locally to playing on a big stage with cameras and stuff. That's something you can't emulate in your practice rounds. I think Jack Nicklaus is famous for saying that the best tool in your toolbox is experience. Getting out and experiencing those moments and getting used to it, because it's different when there's a lot of eyeballs on you and a lot of cameras. The more you experience that, you get used to it, and so it's just about getting out and doing it.
Just reps and reps and reps. I feel that.
And then, with the younger generation, they've got their cameras, they're filming each other in their forms and stuff, so a lot of them are probably already unfazed by the camera.
Makes sense.
As the sport develops and you get younger talent out there, they seem unfazed.
Got social media, people post stuff all the time.
Yeah.
You get used to the
It's
feeling
part
of
of
eyes.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These days, for sure. So, speaking of cameras on you, in the tour, right, a lot of people viewing could say it looks very different when people putt. For instance, I guess a good example would be like Matty O. He's got a very high release point, very Anheuser putt, versus Calvin Heimberg, who reaches down a bit lower, pops it up, versus Gannonberg, who reaches more to the side, whatever. So is it that all these players are doing something differently when they putt, or are there objectively things that they all do? It just looks different when they throw?
It's a great question, and it's actually something I ask myself a lot, and it helped me develop the teaching method I teach for the last 4 years. Anybody I've taught has heard it with the spin routine in a contained area. You're making that magic happen in one little area when that disc comes out of your hand, and as long as it's going forward with the right amount of push or spin towards the target in that area of release, it's got a great chance of going in. If you're pulling on to the side of the putter or moving it away, unless you're moving it to the line you want. So it might be a little outside or left to right. If it's going forward while it's on that line, that's the magic right there. And everyone's is unique. That's probably why they're on tour. Because they found a putt that is natural for them. You're not trying to emulate anything. how they want to do it, and having that style of putt, you can go into a pressure situation and still perform.
Gotcha. That brings up a really interesting point. You said uniqueness brings a lot of qualities out of people. How important would you say uniqueness is, like in a professional setting?
There's, I think, a lot of debate about that. There always has been. What works for one person might not necessarily work for you. And then you have the outliers, the greats, Tiger Woods, and Nick Best, and the Climbos, and the Michael Jordans, where they spent their whole life playing the sport, and they were the greatest. In this book I'm reading, those are like the outliers. But in general, this book I'm reading argues that it's the more well-rounded athletes that are succeeding in today's world in general. So for the general population and the people that aren't the outliers, if you have more of a generalized skill set and you're not playing just your one sport you're dedicated to, you have actually an advantage of the field. Just what this book argues. Make some good points. So that's where I'm at with that right now.
Awesome, man. That's a great answer. I'm going to move on to just a few fun questions. Well, first, I guess this is a bit of a deep one, but do you have a life philosophy or a mantra you go by, and how does that tie into what you do today?
The perspective changes throughout your life, and we just lost John Baldwin last weekend. He was my favorite disc golfer of all time. Just his mannerisms, and he was just a pleasure to be around and play disc golf with. And in my mind, the greatest disc golfer, the greatest golfer, there's a saying, is the one, the definition of a golfer, should I say, is one that least affects the group. It doesn't affect the group in a negative way. So if you can play the game, not affect your group in a negative way, that's what a golfer is. JB was that in every way. And I've tried to hold myself to it. I'm a competitor, stomped the ground plenty of times. Nothing that hasn't happened on a golf course 1,000 times before, right? So, but I'd really like to be a pleasure to play with.
Awesome.
Going forward, I have that perspective now. I remember him by.
Really, really good answer. Myself included, a lot of the younger golfers might not know who JB is. Is there anything you'd like to say to kind of bring his name to light?
Yeah, he was just an icon in Santa Cruz, 2011 Masters World Champion. He won the World Championships there the year Nate Doss won, and he was also a big part of the surf community. He was an accomplished surfer, really great photographer, and he loved being on West Cliff, taking pictures of the ocean. That's how I have him to remember him by, as well as he was the first pro I actually played with. And I learned how to play it in October 2009 at De La. Someone took me up there, and I was there pretty much every day for the next year and a half playing by myself. Get up there early, go surf the rest of the day. And then I caught up to Jonathan's group, and he was playing with some people, and I finished out the last 15 holes with them. And we got to hole 22 in the parking lot coming back, and he threw a hurricane, I want to say, and just laser beam right to the spot you'd want to hit to skip in and park it, about 3 feet away. And it just was like a light bulb. I was like, oh, that's how you throw a golf shot there. Okay.
That's crazy.
And I was up there trying to emulate that for the next year. Trying to emulate that shot on 22.
Yeah, you never forget that feeling, that first incredible shot you see. It really makes you want to chase it as long as you can to just try and get it down.
And he was one of the guys I had to challenge out there as I was coming up through the ranks. He was putting up the best numbers. So I had a great time competing with him throughout the years on my way to being on tour.
Awesome, man.
So he was a great friend.
All right, I'm gonna ask you one more question. This one's a bit more of a fun one. So if you could design any disc ever, it doesn't have to be a realistic with the flight numbers or not, what would you design and what would you name it?
Man, that is a question I'd have to think about. I hope so. My favorite shot is one that you would throw out and have it basically turn around and come back to you, landing flat. That's probably my favorite shot. Actually, no, I'm going to change that. Scratch. We're going to call it window 12.
Window 12. Okay.
You're going to be able to throw it at about 3 o'clock, about 7 feet off the ground. And at about 100 feet, it's going to flip, move left about 50 feet, fly straight.
Wow.
As it turns right, it's going to fly straight through about 3 more windows, moving left. Back to the right, about 5 feet, and then hyzering out through the last little window, just a couple feet. And we call it the impossible shot.
All right.
And it's possible to do with this disc.
All right.
But it's got the impossible shot right on it.
Awesome.
Gonna try and connect the dot.
I got you.
That's my favorite shot. It is the impossible shot where you'd have to do something like that. And
Well, dot space, you heard it here
I
first.
don't like it in a tournament situation,
Yeah.
but in a casual round.
For sure, man. Well, awesome. Thank you so much. That was a fantastic interview, Matt. Thanks for appearing on this show that we got.
Thanks for having
Thank
me.
you.
Thanks, guys.